story. We're looking at a parable coming off of the parables that we looked at before. They don't seem all that connected, but there is a sense in which they are. I don't know how much we'll see that today, but maybe we'll see it a little bit as we go. This is the parable of the unrighteous steward, and it can be a little bit tricky. And so I got a couple things that I want to look at once we get into this to take some of the trickiness off the table before we really examine the parable. But let's read it, starting in Luke 16, verse 1. Now he was also saying to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager. The manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master's taken the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I'm removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes. And he summoned each one of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80. And the master praised the unrighteous manager because he'd acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in their relation to their own kind than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends of yourselves by means of the wealth of the unrighteous, so that when it fails, they'll receive you into the eternal dwellings. Let's wrap it up there and pray. Our Father and our God, we're so grateful that you're a God who seeks after us. And Lord, that's been something that has really just impacted me over the last few weeks, and I know it has others in our church. God, to know that the God of the universe, who knows exactly what we are and what we're made of, would pursue things like us, people like us, after the way we've lived, after the way we've run your name through the mud, just that you find us precious. Lord, not only am I asking that you'll instill that in us, but make yourself precious to us. Lord, so many of us are caught up in just worldliness. That's all you can say about it. It's just worldliness. And we don't always value what we have in you and your riches and your long-term plans as we make our own. But we're looking at a parable today where Jesus really points that out in us. And I ask that by your Spirit, you'll convict us in specific ways that I might not mention today. I might not bring them up. I might not be able to really hit the nail on the head for each one of us. But by your Spirit, I know that you can. Lord, deal with us in our hearts. Open things up that maybe we haven't seen, and help us to be a people that represents you well to the world around us and to the generations coming up behind us. We ask these things in Jesus' name, amen. All right, we're moving from chapter 15 into 16, and we're seeing a little bit of shifting in our tone. And honestly, this has been something, I'll just be honest with you here at the beginning. I've had a lot of stuff just weighing on me lately, and I've been trying to sort through, what is it? God, what are you trying to teach me in this? You know, those of you that have served the Lord for a while, sometimes you just feel heavy, just worn out. And it's not that joy is gone. I am not depressed, and I struggle with that, so that's usually the first thing I'll look at. God, is that what this is? Well, it's not. It's been going on for months, and it just keeps compounding with these little things. And some of the things that really just weigh on me are truth. There's something that I'm dealing with, and the elders know what I'm talking about. It's a truth issue that I wasn't sure if should be something that I would step in and throw my hat in the ring on, going on just within the church. Not this church specifically. I'm talking about Christ's church. And you have to sort through these things because I'm a stickler for details, and I want to make sure things are done right, but I know that's a personality trait of mine. So you have to go to God and say, God, am I upset here because something's not being done the way I like it? Or am I upset here, God, because your truth is being clouded and your people are being confused? It's the latter, okay? So that weighs on me, these things. And I don't like to speak up. I don't want any attention from anybody within our denomination or anybody up above. I want to just be left alone and focus on equipping saints. Don't want to get into anything. but you see things going on out there, and it just weighs on you. And then on top of that, some of you know pastor that I really have learned a lot from, Steve Lawson, was taken out of his ministry, removed himself for some improprieties. And when you see things like that, it's just, man, it feels like you just got punched in the gut. You know, you see these men of God that have served. You know, with some people, you see them fail, the whole Chris Reed thing, some of the things they're into, you can almost see it coming. But you see these other men of God who have been faithfully teaching the word just for 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years. And to see anything be associated with worldliness or sinfulness in a ministry like that, it feels like a heavy weight. And so as I think of these things, this issue that I'm battling right now with the truth and trying to figure out how to navigate this in a way that represents God right, looks for reconciliation, not looking to point fingers and run people out of anything, but to get them to look at the truth and rethink their position. You got that. You got things like this preacher that I'm looking at, and all of it revolves around taking the truth, seeing it, not applying it, and doing things from the world, putting that in its place. And I think about that with you guys. And you have no idea how much I pray for you. And this week especially, I'm not going to talk about it too much because I've been getting emotional up here a lot lately, and I don't like doing that. I like to try to stay as business-like as I can, but I love you all. I love you. And I pray for you, and I see some of the mistakes that we all make. And not picking on anybody, not saying that I would do it better, because I don't either all the time. But our biggest problem, not just in our church, but every church, is worldliness. We care more about what the world says. We care more about what the world does in so many ways. We don't think we do, but it sneaks in little ways. And this really shows us that. It shows us a difference, and we're going to see it as we go through. So we just finished looking at 3 parables. We had a 3 in a row, kind of ascending in detail and really showing us a whole lot of the lengths God will go to and the people that he looks for. And I really was going to just stay here and talk about this because we have a lot of work to do to be the hands and feet of Christ. We're looking for people that sometimes are like a dead coin. They have no idea that their sin is even there. They don't know what sin is. They don't realize they have to answer to a holy and righteous God. So we're planting seeds. We're out there trying to shake people out of their sleep. We see prodigal sons. We see people who have been raised in a church, and then they decide they're going to go a different direction now. And the way that God receives them when they come back, it's never to rub their face in their mistakes or anything like that. He just comes at them. He's running toward them. And we see these lost sheep. That one really pulls on me because there are so many people. Every pastor this morning is preaching a message probably believes, and their church believes, that they believe everything from the beginning to the end of this book. But then you hear these sermons twisted around where things are taken out of context and just used in ways they shouldn't be used. And so you end up with a bunch of sheep that are wandering, and they have no idea. They think they're right in view of their shepherd. They think they're right with the flock, and they're lost sheep through no fault really of their own. They're just wandering. You know, so all those things we see, and we have a God who seeks all of that out. We're looking at that the last 3 weeks, and there's a lot to be said still on it. There's all kinds of things I missed. Prodigal son, we could have stayed several weeks on that. But there's still a theme really in the prodigal son parable and this unrighteous steward parable. And that is that we see 2 different scenarios where wealth is being squandered. Okay? Now, the son's error in the last parable, that was pretty easy to see. He asked for all of his inheritance. He goes out and does whatever he wants with it. We can all see that. Sinners can see that easily. The error in today's passage is easy to see too, as long as we can clear up a little confusion at the outset. And I'll admit that this parable here can be a little imposing. Those of you that are a little bit newer to interpreting Scripture, you're still getting your bearings on how do we do this right. It can be a little bit imposing, but it's not too difficult if you approach anything in Scripture the right way. Okay? So as with any parable, just a little refresher, it's important not to overemphasize the wrong things in it. We don't want to turn everything into an allegory for something else. We don't want to turn everything into a symbol that's applied all over the place. Jesus is speaking to people. He's telling a story. There might be different applications, but we want to be careful that we don't just pull it all apart and dissect it too much. Parables aren't meant to be purely symbolism. They're not meant to be secret codes. He's telling stories to people so that they can understand spiritual truth. They're not attempts at just moralizing things. It's not an illustration that can always apply to all sorts of things. Sometimes they're very pointed. Parables are the wisdom of God, and they're providing insight into God's kingdom and kingdom principles, how the kingdom operates. And some of them may very well be true stories. There are a lot of commentators that will look at certain ones coming up with Lazarus and Dives. A lot of commentators wonder if maybe that was a true story. Jesus would have insight into this. Some look at the prodigal son as if that were maybe a true story, or the Good Samaritan, another one that Jesus had heard. Hey, that applies, it fits, it works. There's different trains of thought on all that. But this one, as it's read, can pose a little bit of problem at first. So I'm going to deal with that part of it at the outset. It almost seems, when you're reading through this parable, that Jesus is commending a thief at first glance. Okay, when I was new to really reading my Bible, when I got to this one, I was like, wait a minute. It sounds like Jesus is saying, do like this guy, but I just saw him basically stealing and lying. So what's going on here with that, right? At least, I think I'm not the only one. It seems like Jesus is commending a thief, especially if you're still honing your Bible skills and your interpretation. By the way, I wanted to do a couple of Sunday nights on hermeneutics, and what that is Bible interpretation, basics. And I wanted to do it, but the calendar wouldn't allow for September or October, so I'm looking at November. I'll have a date as soon as I can for a couple of Sunday nights right in here where we can come in and we're going to look at some different scriptures and show you how I do it so that you can read the Bible and use those same principles in practice, okay? Jesus is commending an unfaithful steward in a sense, not for being dishonest, though. Think about it. You got to go down the list of hermeneutical rules. And the first three rules are context, context, context. Okay. So context, okay, it doesn't really help us a whole lot if I look at this. We're starting a new chapter. Now, those chapters don't really belong there. They're put in to help you and me to divide things up. This is just written by Luke. So we can back up a little bit and not be restricted by numbers. But if I'm looking at the first three parables and then I look at this one, okay, I see the squandering. Okay, that's a little bit of context. It helps a little bit. We know that God has a love for souls. This comes after that, those three parables. We're not sure how long after this one comes. But we covered that rule before. There's another rule we've covered too. Clear passages always govern unclear passages. Okay, so this passage, it almost sounds like, if you're brand new to Bible interpretation, that Jesus is saying, this guy's doing a good thing, be like him. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound right. So that makes this an unclear passage. It's unclear. So we need to find some things that show whether or not this is right to think or wrong to think. All right, so let's look at a couple. I've got two. Gage, do you got Ephesians up there for me? Yeah. Because we do know that Scripture always instructs us on how important truth is. We know that. I know that. I think you do. I'd say unequivocally, the Bible condemns lying and stealing, right? Yeah. One of the commandments is don't steal. We know that. So this says, therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth, each one of you to his neighbor, for we're members of one another. So we see right here a scripture telling us to lay aside falsehood and speak truth. Now, in our parable, we see a man who picked up falsehood and didn't speak truth. Okay, so we have an unclear thing getting cleared up a little bit by another scripture because we can't have contradictions. Let me show you one more. Gage, do you have that next one for me out of Proverbs? Yes. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal faithfully are his delight. So we have another clear passage. That's very, very clear. Lying lips, God says those are an abomination. So he puts that right with other things that he calls an abomination, and those are never good. We spent a month talking about one of them. So lying is just as big of a deal as somebody living in certain lifestyles that God calls sinful. And we need to take that into consideration. But that's very clear. Not only is lying lips an abomination, but those who deal faithfully are God's delight. So we have two things here that help to clear up. Is Jesus saying what this guy did, how he cheated his boss to try to make good for himself, is a good thing that you should all copy? It can't be, because it would be at odds with this scripture and our Ephesians one. We have two clear ones looking at an unclear. We can't have a contradiction, so it can't mean that Jesus is telling everybody to go cheat and steal to make sure that your life is nice and comfy down the road. It can't mean that, even though it kind of looks like that's what he's doing, okay? So verse 9, let's go back to our text. I'm going to jump. Actually, we'll get to verse 9. Let's just put that, shelve it. Let's start back at the beginning. Verse 1 and 2. What do we see? Jesus is telling a parable. There was a rich man who had a manager. A manager is a steward, right? We're like that. The prodigal son was a steward. All of us are. The prodigal son's father gave him a bunch of wealth. It was his to manage. He didn't manage it very good. Well, we see another manager here. His boss has this manager, and this manager had some bad things being said about him, that he's squandering his possessions, kind of like that prodigal son was, but this guy's in charge of a manager's property. And he calls him and he says to him, "What's this I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management. You can no longer be manager." Now, we already know by that right there that Jesus is just telling a story. He's just telling a story. I don't know about you. I've been fired from jobs before. And never was I fired where the boss came and said, "Jake, get everything straight because I'm about to fire you." In fact, they were usually a lot more heated than that. I got fired, my first job that I ever had, I was washing dishes at Camp Wainoa. And sometimes dishes got a little bit overwhelming, and they had an incinerator outside the kitchen, and these were plastic dishes, and it was kind of cool how they went right up when you threw them into the incinerator, and it made this awesome black smoke, and there was some other things going on that I'm not going to say from here, but I do distinctly remember the manager of the campground in my face telling me, as a 14-year-old boy, all the things that I had done wrong, and telling me that I was fired, and I tried to pull the, I quit thing. My timing was off a little bit. I missed it. He fired me first. Yeah. And he didn't say, "Go make sure that all dishes are accounted for. Go make sure that cabin that you've been staying in all summer is as we'd want to find it today." And remembering that this is a campground where people come and our reputations are on the line. Nothing like that. It was pulling everything apart that I owned, and big bad time. Didn't look like this. So we know that this is a story, right? This manager knows that he's going to be called to account. Now, there are things in our life, because parables are always going to be paralleling spiritual truth. And the spiritual truth that you're meant to see and that I'm meant to see here is that every single one of us are going to die. We're going to die. We have someone above us who's let us know that we're finite. We see it every day. We get a little bit older. Yesterday we went to Coastside, and they had this thing where if you look in the camera, you can see how you'll look in 50 years. And according to that thing, I still had my hair, so that's good. But we're going to get older, and we're going to die, and we're seeing this here. And right now, you and I need to understand that you're going to give an account for everything that God has blessed you with. For some of us, he's given us relationships that are amazing. Sometimes we don't always manage those quite right. He's given some of you property and money and prestige and jobs that are really good, and you're going to be called before God to give an account for all of those blessings that he's given you. Every one of us, okay? So this guy knows he's on the chopping block, just like you and I need to know that we're on the chopping block, right? So the manager in verse 3, he understands, I'm a steward. Father, or the manager in his case, the boss had given him a lot of riches. Us, we've been given a lot of riches. So here he goes in verse 3. Manager says to himself, what am I going to do? My master is getting ready to take me out of this position. Now, I can't dig, and I sure don't want to beg. I got it. I'm going to plan ahead. So that when I'm taken out of this job, I'll have a nice soft landing. Now think about that in our terms. We all know that we're going to die. Now I get that the Lord could come at any moment, and one of these days I have a hobby that I'm going to do. I already have a hobby, but one of these days I'm going to put it to paper. I was telling Jen about this one time. I love church history, and I love weighing things that we teach against church history, because a lot of times I find that things that I thought were true all my life actually weren't ever being taught in the church until like 1958. And I'm like, ooh, what do we do with this now? We have to reevaluate. And one of these days, I'd like to see if I can locate as many as possible big-name commentators, preachers, pastors, high influence in the church that would have bet everything, and some in fact did, that Jesus is coming by this date, by this date, by this date, 5 years, especially to lump as many as I can into Jesus is coming in 5 years, and then maybe make another one for 10 and 20, and just so we can all see that a lot of people weren't accounting for their future, and they sure weren't accounting for the eternal future, because it's imminent. It's happening right now, and we need to be ready for Christ to come today, but we need to be planning like he's never going to show up, and all of us are going to get old and die in nursing homes. You understand? Okay, we don't always do that. This guy does. He knows, I'm going to be on the chopping block. I'm not going to have this position anymore. I better get to work making sure that when I'm not here, I've got somewhere to go that's going to be a little more cozy than digging dishes or begging on the side of the road. All right, that's all that's going on is preparation. That's the point. Thinking ahead. We know that Jesus doesn't condone theft. We know that Jesus doesn't condone lying. So it can't be those that are the point. Prepare is the point. And prepare in a different way, but we need to know that we're on the clock and that each one of us are going to be called to give an account, and that's the point. Now, it goes a little further than maybe what you're thinking, and I want to look at this a little bit closer. Look at verse 5. So he summons all these debtors, and what does he start doing? How much do you owe the master? Oh, this guy owns 100? All right, well, take your bill. Hurry up, sit down, quick. Write 50. What does he do with the next guy? How much do you owe? 100 measures? All right, take your bill, write 80. And the master praised the unrighteous manager because he'd acted shrewdly. Now, you really know it's a story now, because I've left some jobs getting cussed out all the way out the back door. I'd love to tell you some of those stories maybe on another time. Some of them are pretty good. But never did they praise me for acting shrewdly. Usually it was the opposite. So we can tell, okay, we got a fictional story, but it is kind of one of those things where, and we all know, there's almost a humorous aspect. Every once in a while, you know that you got served right. Okay? All right. Well, good on you. That's a good one. They got me there. And that's kind of what's happening here. It's one of those. Yep, okay. I can't applaud the crime because this boss just got robbed of a lot of money that he owed. But you sure got to say, that was good thinking. He used something against me, right? Jesus isn't saying, use something against God, try to weasel out of anything. Not at all what he's saying. But he was smart. It was well played, man. Basically that. And where it's happened to me where you thought things could have went a different way, but you do at least got you got to admire the person that beat you to the punch. What's being praised, again, is not dishonesty. What's being praised is the foresight. That's what Jesus is driving at here this whole way. And what he says there following, because he acted shrewdly in verse 8, for the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. What he's saying is the people out there in the world that are going about their life, they're preparing for tomorrow, preparing for 10 years from now, preparing for their retirement, preparing for their kids. In a lot of ways, they're a whole lot more wise than these people of God who know better, who know where they're going, who know where they're heading, who understand that they have to give an account. They really do know it because God said it. There's a lot of ways in which the world plans for their future a whole lot better than the people of God plan for theirs. He's not telling us to gain wealth by unrighteous actions. If you look at verse 9, Jesus reiterates, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of the unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they'll receive you into the eternal dwellings. Now, that verse there, that one can get a little bit confusing because of the wording. He's not talking about a great wealth transfer. Now, the NAR and a lot of these teachings that I like to go against, this prophetic teaching and all this, they've been talking about a great transfer of wealth for like the last 30, 40 years, and they base it on a couple of Old Testament verses. I'm not going to pull those out right now, but look, if you're greedy and all you want is money and health and wealth, you're going to gravitate to things that sound like you're going to get that. There is no great wealth transfer. There isn't. And you can try to pull verses out of Proverbs all you want. The people of God are not promised that one day the world is just going to hand over all their money to the church. And they probably wouldn't be advised to do that right now anyway, because most of the church were so worldly, we wouldn't use it right anyway. I'm just saying. What we're seeing here, though, this is very hard to say with certain translations because some make it sound even harder. I say to you, make friends for yourselves. What kind of friends are we talking about? Well, we have this means, we're to use this wealth of unrighteousness. That doesn't mean that wealth is sinful, but Jesus is talking to people who saw it as being very, very blessed in the eyes of God, as we should if you're blessed financially, but they took it to another step. It was almost like the more righteous you were, the more money you had, is the way they looked at it. So Jesus is taking a dig at that because that's absolutely not true. Now, money in itself is not evil, but there's no inherent righteousness in it. There isn't. It's man-made. God didn't institute money, we did. And we did it after the fall. Everything we do has this weird, it can be used for blessing or it can be used the opposite way. Everything we create, everything we do, but we can take this stuff that has the ability to corrupt us so easily, and we can use it for things that have eternal value rather than the stuff that we spend it on that's gone tomorrow. And this isn't a message about you giving. I'm not even concerned about that at all. We're going to see that down there later. What we are looking at, though, is making friends with this stuff. Now, all of us know in the world we can easily make friends if you have a lot of money in your pocket. It's easy. You go in any bar downtown Akron, and everybody in there will be your friend in 15 minutes if you walk up to the front with a big wad of cash and just start buying, right? It's easy to make friends. But we're to take that money and not look at it that way. We're to take that money and say, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to have to give an account for everything I do. And it's not just your money. I'm talking about everything. Because the people of the world, they think, I'm going to retire someday. Now, the best of them do. Not all of us, because a lot of times many of us are caught up with a very, very close right here and right now. Jesus is pointing, though, to somebody who isn't, somebody who's thinking long term. And he's saying, the people of God need to be more like this, because you can find sinners who work and work and work, and they save and they plan, and they make sure that when the day comes that they retire, that they'll have it made. They'll be sitting on easy street. They're going to have a nice place to land for themselves. They've got their home in order. They've got their finances ongoing, provided for. They're gaining interest. They're putting a lot of work. They send it to financial advisors. They go and talk to their bankers. They set these plans out, and that's admirable. We should do that. But Jesus' whole point is the people of God would do well to take their eternity as serious as these people do. You see it in the world, planning for this. They know they're only going to live so long, but they sure do plan accordingly to make sure that they get there as best they can. Here we are, the people of God, who all know that we're going to have to make an account for everything that you're a manager of. And the world has really done a number on us, because when I look at some of the things that I've done, and I look at some of the things that I don't have foresight in, there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to have some explaining to do when it's time for me to stand before God, and same with you. And I don't want that for us. So Jesus is praising the shrewdness of the soon-to-be ex-steward. He's kind of like, you got to hand it to him. He was really smart. He had those well-played moments there. And we're to look at our eternity the same way. A lot of the things that we have can be used for good or bad, but we're supposed to be thinking ahead to the future, making friends for the future. A lot of the money that we have could be better used for people that need it more than I do. I can hoard it, and I need to plan for my future, and I need to pass some of it on to my kids. Those are biblical principles. But sometimes there are needs right in front of me. Sometimes there are needs right in front of you. And although it might derail my plans a little bit, I'm sowing into eternal things, not just my life. Because at the end of my life, I still got more life. And so do you. And so does everybody else. They're just more limited in where they're looking. We're to make friends, so we have less fortunate people all around us that we should be willing and ready and able to help. We have folks that, because of their own fault, are in the shape they're in. We have people that, no thought of their own, are in the shape they're in. Doesn't matter. We're planting seeds that eternity will reap a harvest. And it's not just the people. It's not just always poor people or the lesser. We saw in the last 3 parables a little bit of teaching about angels rejoicing when one sinner comes home. Well, these angels rejoice every time we glorify God. We looked at that in Ephesians. Every time I do anything, that you do anything that glorifies the Father, the angels, they're longing to look into these redeemed sinners that are not sinning, but they're actually bringing honor and glory to the Father just like they do. But they were nothing like these holy angels. And they look at this and they glorify God because of what he's done in these lives. So it's not just the people that we're reaching for the kingdom that will be there to welcome us. It's the angels of heaven that see these vessels that are using everything they've been given to steward for the right reasons. And they're glorifying God. And even God himself. The angels aren't going to be happy if God's not happy because they're always looking to him to see what's the reaction. What are we supposed to be doing? God rejoices. We're making friends. We're making a soft landing. Now, I want to make sure that you don't mistake what I'm saying. We're not working to get our salvation. And if you were here for the last 2 weeks, you know that. I beat that drum all the time. All the time. But we are earning reward in heaven. We are. And we're also sowing into the kingdom by means of people. We want to see more and more and more people come to the saving faith, okay? So when I look at this, I see people like this steward, and he's doing all this stuff with urgency because he knows that his manager, his boss is going to call him to account. So you'd think that the people of God would take it even more seriously and more urgently, that we're stewards that are going to have to answer a big, long Rolodex of all the things that you were enlisted to be caring for and using correctly and asked how you did. Now, you know, and I know too, we're far too short-sighted far too often. And Jesus reiterates this throughout, really, a lot of New Testament teaching is going to say the same thing. We know that, well, I don't have any slides for you, Gage, so don't even look, but I have a couple of notes here that I wrote down this morning. Matthew 6:19, you can write this down and go look at it later. It says, don't store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy, right? Where thieves break in and steal it all. But store up treasures in heaven for yourselves, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If my heart is for God, then my treasure is what is going to glorify him today. With everything he's given me, what can I do to glorify God? And again, I'm not just talking about money. 1 Timothy 6:17, and I don't have this either, Gage, so don't worry about it, but 1 Timothy 6:17, Paul's writing to Timothy about the church in Ephesus, one of the churches that he was there at the beginning of. He says this at the very end of the book. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Let's listen to this. Instruct them in verse 18 to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. Paul sounds a lot like what Jesus is saying. Timothy, tell all these believers in Ephesus to start planning for a soft landing when they get to heaven. You're not going to be punished as a Christian, but we hear about this reward that every one of us, we're going to have all of our works set up. I don't know how this works. I don't know what the symbolism means or anything else, but all I do understand is some of these works are going to be coming through a fire that still hold up, just like when you throw precious metal into a fire and it burns out all the impurities and you're still left with gold or silver. That's going to be our works. But a whole lot of it is going to be burned away because a lot of it is like hay and stubble. It's worthless. It's not even worth anything for our time here, let alone for eternity. And so when we think about some of the things that you're invested in, and those of us that are really struggling with worldly mindsets, we need to shake out of that a little bit and start thinking about the friends that we need to be making in eternity by using what God has given you to steward for him. Now, those friends may be the poor, like I said. They might be just the angels in heaven that see what you're doing, God himself, working toward this soft landing. We need to think long-term, yes, but we need to be thinking longer term than most of us do. Now, practically, if we apply this to you and I, we're too much like the world in all sorts of ways. Now, I'm going to say some things that some of you are going to get upset about probably, and that's okay. Like, I'm learning to take it, and I'm much better at it today than I was a few years ago. And I understand, never think that I'm pointing something right at you. Like last week, I came up here and I said, we have someone in our church that, in fact, Chris, could you wave at us? Everybody look back there to the guy in the red shirt. There's Chris. Now, I'm not trying to put him on the spot, but he came up to me with a concern last week, and the concern was, how can we be letting the neighborhood know that we're here? His idea was, what if I went up and down the street and just started knocking on doors and telling them we're here? What if I invited them to church? What if I told them that we have somewhere where their children could come on a Wednesday night and they could drop them off if they wanted to? What if I told them that? And meanwhile, I'm sitting there trying to not break down in tears because for 4 years I've been praying that anybody might step up and say, I want to do a little bit more, and I want to see some people that are out there find the Lord. Now, last week I said that we need more than one doing it. Just need a couple, one more. And I want you to pray. Yeah, and I want you to pray. And anybody today, if you're already like, look, I'll go walk with him, then come up here after service and let's start working it out. But after that, I said something else. I was talking about gathering with the saints and how important that is. Now I realize that I could come up here every week and say that same thing, and it wouldn't matter to most of you because your situation's different. I get it. I know. I was the way too. My situation was always different. It takes a while for us to say, oh, that applies to me. Okay, so that was uncomfortable. I don't want to tell people that some of the things that we think are so important aren't on Sunday morning and probably aren't on Wednesdays either. I don't like telling you that, but I have to. Okay? Now I'm going to tell you some other things that I don't like to tell you, but these are things that we do have to know. Okay? So we practically apply this steward who's planning for his immediate future and long-term future. And Jesus is saying, the children of light, they would do really well to follow this example because they're walking through life stumbling around all over these things of the world. They're not planning, and they have a lot further view than most of these worldly people because a lot of them think they're going to die, and that's it. Or they think they're going to die, and God's going to say, well, you did a lot of good things too. Come on in, and St. Peter's going to let them in and all that. We have these weird ideas. But believers, Christians know that we answer to a sovereign God, and he's given us a whole lot of things that he thinks are very important, and he's put them in my hand, this guy, and said, be responsible for this. And I don't know what to do, so he gives me all this teaching that says, here's what you do with it. And it applies to more than money. If we took eternity as seriously as the world takes their finite time on earth, we would be very wise, according to Jesus. But often, we're foolish because we don't plan eternity. We barely plan for the next generation. How much of what you're doing and what you're involved in right now will matter in 10 years? How about 50? Do you even ever think about, what am I doing right now that's an investment that can bring God glory in 10 years, in 20, in 50 years? I'm thinking that way all the time. What can we be doing to shake some of these people out, to shake myself out of some of the worldliness, and remember that I'm a husband, I'm a father. One day I may be a grandfather. What am I doing today to make sure that they honor God more than I do, that they're more sanctified than I am, that they're more holy than I am? How about your kids and your grandkids? What are we putting in place today that will be a difference maker so that when they grow up and go through the youth group, they don't disappear like hundreds and hundreds have since I've been here? What are we doing to stop that? What are we doing differently? Do you think about that? We're doing things whether you realize it or not. but it doesn't have any eternal value, or might even be looked at as eternal sabotage. Some of the way as spouses that we can talk to our significant other in front of the kids even sometimes. What are we doing to the kids? What we're teaching them a lot of times is how to not have a conflict right, but teaching them that's the way you do it, right? When husbands and wives fight and scream or throw things, you're teaching your kids that that's how you have conflict resolution. You're planning for the future. When let kids run the house. They tell mom and dad what to do. Well, how do you think that's going to pan out when their kids are born? It's worse. We're investing. We're not thinking about that in the moment. We're just thinking, I don't want to get up off my phone, and so go do your thing. We're thinking right now, short-sighted. Jesus is saying, why don't you be more like these people who are thinking about tomorrow? Christian, people of God, wake up. What are you doing? We're so self-absorbed. That's what the world does. We're not of the world. We're supposed to be outside of the world. And so when our kids run Christian homes, that is not a good use of your resources. Jen and I were in children's church and youth group for years. And I remember the very first time that we had a kid miss almost the entire summer because he was in sports. I looked at Jen and she looked at me and we thought, we realize what they're teaching their kids, but these ones don't. And what they taught their kids came to fruition in just 10 years. One time, check this one out. We had kids in our children's church. It happened a couple times, but it happened more often in youth. I remember we didn't have one of our kids show up a couple weeks in a row, so we went to find out what's going on. Everything okay? That kid was grounded from church. Mom and dad were really making a point, weren't they? They did. They did. We had it happen a few times. Okay. We do these things, and parents, think about this. Spouses with little ones, are we passing on more of our bad habits than our godly ones to the next generation? Because this is what Jesus is talking about. Think about what you're passing on. Now, there are a lot of things we can't help it, and one of the worst feelings as a father is to see one of your bad qualities come out in one of your kids and think, that is from me. That's from me. They got it from me. Personalities we can't help. I'm not blaming any of us for any of that. But it reminds me I've got work to do because I see something in me that I know God's been trying to hammer out of me for a long time, and I'm too stubborn. And I see it come up in one of my kids, and it's like, I got to start thinking about the future. What kind of problem is this going to cause them down the road when they're married? What kind of problem might this look like if it keeps growing and it's allowed to pass down to their kids? Are we thinking about these things? We don't want to tell our kids no. We let them get into things, and then now we're afraid to even go deal with it because now it's turned into a monster, and so we won't even deal with it. You're not thinking forward at all. You're actually actively harming your down the road by doing that. The world plans ahead. Jesus is saying in their own sinful lives, there's one thing the people of God should be noticing out of this parable and learning from: the fact that the world teaches to look ahead for the future, at least for its own purposes. So the people of God should be looking toward eternal ones. And we have to ask, because we're way too far worldly, we have to be asking, are we too selfish? Are we too focused on immediate things? Or are we more focused on future things, even that are passing away, than we are about the eternal that's way out there? We've got to evaluate this, church, because most of us are a product, and our church currently is a product of nobody thinking about it. Everybody's saying, Jesus is going to come in 5 years, and look at the state of discipleship in the American church right now. We can evangelize, fine, but what about discipleship? We can't, because we don't think about it. We have a Savior that is running, wants to pick up these precious souls while we sit here and get so absorbed in what we're doing. Now, look, some of you understand what I'm saying because you prepare. We have people in here with degrees. You had to work for those, right? You had to work for those. Some of you have great jobs. You had to do a lot of work to get there. Well, we're not earning our salvation, so again, don't think that. But we are, step by step, gradually increasing our reward, and by that, increasing God's glory through your life by everything he's put you in charge of. Some of you have children, some of you have grandchildren, some of you have spouses, some of you have property, some of you have funds, some of you have time. You have a whole lot of things that are in your care. And God is going to call you to account for all of those things one day, and he's going to go right down the list. What have you done with this? What about this? What have you done with this? I gave you this. Why is this the return on that? And if you want to stand there and say, well, I was too selfish. Well, God, I was a little bit tired that day. Well, God, I really did like that game on my phone. I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. We have to learn to do this. Before I do anything, if I'm in the habit of doing something, if this is my response to whatever situation comes up, those canned things that we just automatically come up with, ask yourself, what am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? If I get angry when Jen says certain things or it rubs me the wrong way, if I'm getting angry, what am I getting angry for? If I'm getting mad at one of my kids or mad at a coworker, what am I getting angry for? Think about that. Ask yourself that. Is there a real valid reason for that or no? Most of the time we're going to find it's because I don't like something. It's just me selfish. Or what am I doing this for? Because you're going to buy something, or you're going to go somewhere, or you're going to plan for this or that. You're going to take some resources that you have and use them a specific way. Ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Now, there are a lot of reasons to spend and use things for your own means. Nothing wrong with that. Again, we're not supposed to just go live in a hole somewhere and everything that comes in goes out. You're supposed to be preparing for your life and your children's life, looking out for those around you. It all goes together, but learn to ask yourself, what am I doing this for, whatever this may be? And then ask yourself, if I get what I'm after, what then? Does that sound reasonable? I've bounced from place to place in so many different areas in my life, looking for, I'm not happy with this, so I'm going to do this. I'm not happy with that, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a 180 on this issue or this issue here for whatever reason, because myself didn't like it at the time. If I would have learned, and if you can learn, and if I can learn, to start asking, what am I doing this for, and follow that up with, if I get what that is, then what am I going to do with it? And if either of the answers to either of those questions isn't something you'd be glad to answer to God for, then don't waste time and effort and resources chasing it, doing it, saying it, striving for it. If you don't want to answer to God for, first of all, what that thing is that you are doing, this thing, what am I doing it for? If you wouldn't want that answer to be seen before heaven and the angels and God, then maybe that's not something you should be working toward. And if that's okay and that checks out, nope, I think I'm okay. Then if I get what I'm after, what am I going to do with this thing? Maybe it's a new job because I would need better finances or whatever. Great, absolutely awesome. What then? Are you going to work your life away so much that now you don't have any time for your kids or your spouse? Are you going to be missing church week after week after week? There's parents, we let our kids do that. You understand what you're training them to do? Work on Sunday? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. I know you don't want to hear it, but I have to tell you, you're sabotaging your children's eternal reward. You're not thinking. We're thinking, oh, but it's teaching them good work habits. Yep, sure is. And that's very short-sighted of you. They can learn good work habits in a million other ways. I get it, and I've made a lot of these mistakes myself, but we have to ask, what am I doing this for? If I get it, what then? In 50 years, will your kids or grandkids have learned not to repeat behaviors that you have and not had to struggle with so much unpacking as you have? Or are they going to be doing the same thing, following your same patterns? And if we can't even be comfortable with the answer to that, then we sure shouldn't be comfortable about how that's going to play out eternally. Lately, I've just been so burdened with the worldliness of the church. We see pastors falling week after week after week because we're not asking these questions. We're not evaluating ourselves. Multiple times a week, we have pastors being left out of their churches, thrown out, arrested. Saw several just in the last few weeks, arrested. Prison time for some of these people. And every generation, the church seems to get more and more worldly. The price we're paying for it is what's happening all around us. We have to get out of this worldly mindset. Now, we're worldly because we don't think that we're really going to be called to account often enough. You might believe it deep down, but the only time we so often think about this is when somebody is reminding us. But you don't always think it, and I don't always think it when I feel like I'm right in the moment, or I'm wanting something and I'm getting it. But we're eternal souls, and we're all going to be called to account. And we're going to stand before a just God, and every single one of our deeds are going to be evaluated. The only hope that we have is in Christ. We have a world full of people out there that some of them realize it, some don't. They're going to stand before God. They're going to be evaluated. We have a God who longs to find them and bring them home. But we have a bunch of people in churches. I'm not blaming anyone specifically. I'm talking about nationwide, worldwide. We've got a bunch of us that are so focused on ourselves in the here and now. We're forgetting we have a God who goes to those kind of lengths to find and search and sweep and scan. Well, what is he using? He can't use unwilling people that are so focused on our little problems and our immediate needs and what suits me right now. We're not even thinking about eternity, but God's outside of time longing for these people. We can go on about our lives and look, I never want anybody to leave here, but there are churches all over the place that'll talk about your met needs, and they'll just pump you up about how good you need to be feeling today and all this, but I don't believe that that's what you want. That's not what I want. I mean, there's times I do because I'm being selfish or whatever, but look, I believe you do want to see a difference made. We can make a difference, but not if we're being so short-sighted that all we care about is me right now. We can put this into everyday practice, just the way you talk to each other, the way you talk to each other at home, the way you love each other, and go out of your way knowing that I don't want to do this right now, but I am going to have to answer to God for this, and I want him to be glorified through what I'm about to do. So I'm going to bite my tongue, and I'm going to go out and do something I really don't feel. I'm going to get up to somebody that needs help. I don't care why I think they deserve it or don't, but I'm going to do it because I'm trying to invest in eternity here. I'm done investing it all in me because the payoff isn't very big. I believe that's you. But he saves us in order to change us. You think about the gospel of Jesus Christ. You have all these sinners, and they can't do anything about their condition. They're born in it. And then we have this God who loves like he does, like we just looked at in the entire chapter 15. He's desperately in love with these prized possessions of his that are all covered in mud and lost and all over the place. And so to come down and assume a body, flesh, to go through all the troubles that we're going to have to go through, to work as hard as we have to work for the small return that we get. He willingly did this. And he did this so that he could save us from our sin, because that is what changes all of it. All the problems that we're seeing around us right now, the political issues, the racial issues, the answer to all of these things is the gospel. Every single one of them. Because when God takes a sinner who's been an enemy of God all this time, finds him, changes him, suddenly this sinner now, he's opened up to a whole new world. He's not after things for himself. Now, could we say that about the church all the time? No. We fall back into it, but we're supposed to be changed. He gives us a brand new heart. Now we're thinking eternally, not just short-sighted. And so this person that's had their life changed because Christ died to save sinners, he saves that sinner. He washes them clean, just like we saw in the prodigal son. He puts that robe. They don't look like them anymore. Now they look like him. So you have this person who was an enemy of God one day, covered in a robe of righteousness the next. Didn't care about sin at all one day, didn't even give it a second thought, maybe once in a while felt guilty. But because God reached out and found this one, he showed them some love, all of a sudden they can see it. They're crying out in repentance, forgive me, forgive me. As they're saying it, here's the Father wrapping them in righteousness, putting a ring on, you're mine, putting shoes on their feet. Why? So that they can walk on and start to represent him and take that heart of his on themselves and start to walk the same way. We're supposed to be just like him out here in the community. But why are we looking a lot less? When Jesus is seeing this this parable, and I hope that helps you understand this a little bit. He's not saying, go be a cheater, go be a liar. He's simply saying, if I can show you a sinner that plans for the future, I should be able to show you a whole bunch of children of light that do a whole lot more planning. And that's the kind of church we need to be. If we are that kind of a church, then I can guarantee you something. I can guarantee you won't see the children and the youth group running 0 and 2 on a Wednesday night. Guarantee it. Not if we're out there seeking the lost. Not if we have a heart so much for the future that I don't care about me today. That if that means I got to sacrifice some things to go and be a part of a body who some of them probably need the gifts that I have, I'm going to go do it. Because their need is more important than mine, because I'm sowing for eternal friends. I'm making sure that when I get to heaven, I've got boatloads of reward to throw down at the feet of Christ and say, I hope you were glorified. I wish I'd had more time to have even more. I don't want to be standing there going, well, there's what I got. I lived for 80 years, 60 years, 20 years, and here's what I've got, nothing. Everything you're working for is going to be gone. And most of the stuff that is so precious to you, when you die, your kids are going to throw it all into a dumpster. What they can't sell, they're going to throw away. They don't want it. They don't need it. You don't need it. None of us need so many of the things we think we need. If we would consider, why am I doing this? And if I get it, what will I do with it then? More often, we'll be having stuff that nobody can touch, nobody can tamper with, that in eternity, it'll still be valuable because we're talking about residual effects of saved people living like saved people and bringing more saved people with them, right? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, shake us out of worldliness. We don't want to be this way. We don't. I do not believe that we want to be like this, God. We want to be like you. And it's just hard for us. We're not hearing this kind of thing in our leaders. We're not seeing it. We're certainly not seeing it by so many. But God, this is what you're calling us to, this preparation for eternal things. The petty stuff that so many of us get caught up in. And God, we understand there are so many things that we're responsible for today, and they need to be dealt with today. And we want to provide for our families. We want to have nice things. We want a nice, easy life. But God, help us to see that that's not the most important thing. The most important thing are these lost people that are all around our church right now. They're lost. And so many of us are so consumed with what we're doing and what our ends are that we're trying to achieve, and we wouldn't want to answer to you as to why we're chasing half of these things. Help us to see that clearly, Lord, I pray. Convict us of places that we're being way too short-sighted. Help us to see longer term and think of eternal consequences of some of the things that we're doing. Help us, Lord, to be people of God who you wouldn't look at and say, be more like these unsaved people. Don't let us be shameful like that. Help us to be people that you look at, the angels rejoice at, that you're well pleased with, so that, God, when we come to heaven and we have to give an account, that we'll be as happy as we can be to show it. We'll all still be wishing we could have done more. But I just don't want anybody here to be ashamed. And Lord, when I have to stand before you and answer for the people that you put in my care, as far as this stuff goes, Lord, I don't want to be ashamed. And I want every single one of them to not be ashamed either. I want you to be able to say, well done to every single one of us and our descendants. We ask these things in Jesus' name. And God, if there are any that are unsaved here today, I pray that you'll convict them. Help them to see that the way that they're heading is very short-sighted. They may have all their affairs together. They may have their future all planned out. But Lord, you could take that in a second. And in a blink of an eye, they could be going from working toward all the things they want for their old age to standing before a just God. Help them to see the reality of that, Lord, that it's not just superstition or me saying things, but you are God, and you're sovereign over all. And you've laid these things out that we would see them, take them to heart, and live accordingly. So, God, I pray that you'll help us to do that. I ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
To Jesus I surrender.
again and make this your prayer.
Oh, to Jesus I surrender all. To Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust in His presence daily. I surrender all. I surrender all. All to Thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender.
Can we sing that chorus one more time? I surrender all.
I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender.
We say that, and I pray that we mean it. It means surrendering our words, our mouth, our attitudes, our relationships, our drives for certain things, our belongings. If Christ were to ask you to lose one of them in the moment, we have to be ready to say yes. He's not asking you to get rid of everything right now. He's just not. But He's also not all about us being totally set for the future to the point where we've neglected everything of eternal consequence. Now, just to remind you, if there's anybody here that says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what this will be. I know Chris was talking about going up a street maybe 1 week and a couple weeks later try another one. We're not talking about every day out there hitting it, but there's got to be more willing than just one in a church with this many people in it that says, look, I'm going to at least go stand with him. Chris could do all the talking, believe me. Somebody else just accompanying him. You can't do these things on your own. Jesus didn't with the disciples. He sent two. You need somebody else. Plus, you kind of never know what you're going to find out there. Ellet's still pretty good, but hey, there's some spots, right? But I want you to just come up here and talk to me, and we're planning it out. We're in the planning stages right now. But look, we've been sitting here since the 40s, this church, and right now, most of the neighborhood doesn't even know we exist. We had all of our ministry outreach that we did at Orienta House and all that taken during COVID and not given back. They've done so much turnover at that place. Nobody knows what's going on, apparently. It's not something we can even get involved in right now. But we have a harvest field right here, and right there, and right over here. It's all over. Well, I'll make sure to get the contact. Hey, if we got more, then let's get more. We could do a rotation. We could send a couple of pairs out. We shouldn't have. It breaks Jen and I's heart when we, as children's pastors, for as many as we had like 50-something in the children's church at one point. We had so many youth that we had to have our own Sunday morning service because there wasn't enough room for them all in here. We had 45 or something like that on Sunday mornings. Now, some of the things that were going on in the church at that time I would not take back for the world. So I'm happy with what we got. I believe in the decisions we made. But there are a lot of kids out there that need to know about Christ. There are a lot of families that could be changed if mom and dad knew Christ. There are a lot of teenagers who are in some really bad situations in their life right now that could use some godly encouragement. Other Christians, because some of them are so outcast at their school, they feel like they're the only one. They might be the only one, some of them. They need each other. So pray about it. And be praying for us because it's not easy to make some of the decisions we've had to make. And please, above all, remember me and Jen and Chad and Heidi, Chad and Jeremy, Rose and Ronnie in your prayers that we seek after holiness above everything else, because you see these pastors and ministries getting totally blown up because little problems aren't dealt with. they have to be dealt with. We have to take it seriously. So please pray for us. That's one of the biggest things I'm always praying for our leaders to be after Christ. Let's close out. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity that we have. And Lord, I believe that you are stirring up hearts. I just want us to be all of the same mind. We want to see people here grow in you, and we want to see people out there come to know you and grow in you as well. We have friends here in our church that are more than equipped to make a disciple if we can just get them here. So Lord, help change some of our hearts so that we have the servant's heart, wanting to go out and be your hands and feet to rescue and to find sheep and to chase after sons. And Lord, our shut-ins that are at home, that are unable to get out, and especially, Lord, I pray for Edie right now, that you'll continue to strengthen her and give her clear wisdom on the direction she's heading. God, I thank you for the work you've already done, some of it in Barb. I thank you for Linda and the progress that they've been making, Lord, but continue to be with them, bless them, strengthen them, and let them know that they're not alone. And those that are caring for them and helping them, God, give them strength as well. It's a hard, lonely road to be caring 24/7 for someone. So encourage and strengthen them, I pray as well. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Love ya.